we are excited to get this roundtable started with you, and welcome back to everybody who was in the earlier sessions of the day, which were incredible. If you participated, I invite you to share something you gained from those conversations, or maybe a new insight, something that has been eye-opening or resonated with you in the chat. My name is Nina Rodriguez. I am creator and host of Grief and Light. It is a podcast and grief support community for grievers. And myself, along with our incredible speakers today who will shortly introduce themselves, we are going to be talking about navigating the holidays your way. It's the happiest, saddest time of the year, if you will, because it brings up so many emotions as we turn the page. And so we're going to be delving into what that means to navigate it with agency, and how each of us, and what that looks like for each of us. And the co-host, if you could help me admitting people while I'm introducing, that would be greatly appreciated. I'm going to go ahead and share all of the speakers' information now, and I will also share it at the end of our conversation. But here goes here we go, all the links in case you want to connect, or if somebody, if you attended an earlier session and that resonated with you. Thank yourselves for being here today. I want to thank you for being here today. It is not easy to often delve into grief and talk about this, but it is something that is helpful in learning to navigate loss in life with agency. And I mentioned earlier in the chat, I'm curious what brings you here. Is it the loss of a person, a pet, a beloved, a life-altering change? If you could just share what resonated with you about this event, so we know where you're coming from, where your heart's at, that would be wonderful. All questions will be answered at the end, but I encourage you to go ahead and share them in the comments. I'll be keeping an eye out for them throughout the conversation, and so we can address them towards the end. I also want to thank Andy Ingall and the Reimagine team for supporting this event, and to our amazing speakers. Those who may not know, Reimagine is a nonprofit organization catalyzing a uniquely powerful community, including people of different backgrounds, ages, races, sexual orientation, gender identities, and faiths, and people of no faith. Their gatherings aim to support each other in facing adversity, loss, and mortality, and to transform life's biggest challenges into action and growth. And we are very grateful for this space. As I mentioned, the session is being recorded, and everybody who registered here will receive a follow-up email with all of the freebies and tools that we discussed, along with our contact information as well. And in the chat, you may see that the letsreimagine.org website, so you can have some more information there as well, especially if you're new to the space. The conversations that we're going to have will touch on, obviously, the topics of grief and loss. So we invite you to honor your capacity, whatever that means to you. We each have different capacities, so listen and participate at the level that feels right to you. And before we get started, I'm going to invite you to a brief grounding practice. If you've been here all day, you've had that all day. So I won't do a long one, just a very short one to encourage presence in this moment. So I invite you to close your eyes for a minute or lower your gaze, fully attuning to this moment and to the time that we will be sharing together. If you are comfortable, kind of stretch your back, roll your shoulders back, unclench your jaw. See what part of your body needs to shift in this moment to be a little bit more comfortable. Take slow, deep breaths, one in through your nose, and exhale fully through your mouth. One more, in for 4 and out for 6. And as you continue to be present, feel the ground beneath you, the chair supporting you. If you're wrapped in a warm blanket, feel how that is comforting you in this moment, and allow yourself to be held. Bring gentle awareness to your heart, maybe placing a hand there. And notice whatever is present in you today, whether it's love, anger, guilt, grief, gratitude. All of it is welcome here. As we move into this conversation, let us hold a shared intention to listen with openness, speak with care, and to assume positive intent, trusting that everyone here is doing their best to meet grief with compassion. And take one more deep breath in and release what is not serving you in this moment, making space for full presence for the next hour and a half at least. And when you're ready, open your eyes. If you're willing and able to, I would love to see your beautiful faces. This is part of our grief tending time in community. You absolutely don't have to if you don't want to. That's perfectly fine as well. But I would love to see who's here in the room with us. So this session, this roundtable is called Your Holiday, Your Way, Honoring Your Needs This Season. And as we know, grief changes everything, including how we navigate the holidays, which can feel like the happiest, saddest time of year. And I would like to welcome our speakers here with us today. Their bios are on their website, but I just want to give them a brief moment to introduce themselves. I'll just go in order. So Susie, Amanda, Anna, and Dr. Elreacy Dock. We'll go in that order. So I invite Susie to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I am a transformational creativity and grief guide. I coach people one-on-one. I do intimate deep dive programs and retreats, and my way is partnering the creative process with grief in order to feel and acknowledge and honor and release our grief.
Amanda.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Nina, for opening it up for us. You're so perfect. Yes, you do such a great job. Thank you. We missed you today, too. Very grateful to be a part of this. Just want to throw that out there and to have this community of amazing people doing this just heartfelt, real work. I can't imagine doing anything else. I am a loss and empowerment coach. I am an energy healer. I am certified in Reiki level 1 and 2, EFT tapping, chakra balancing, and more. I am also a writing coach. I'm an award-winning author. I'm a podcaster. I host retreats. I host workshops. I do a lot of different things all under the umbrella of empowering people to move through their loss with some kind, when they're ready, with some kind of intention, using grief as a catalyst for growth, empowerment, purpose, all that stuff. So thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Next.
Hi, everyone. Yep, hi. And just reverberating, echoing what Amanda said. Thank you to each one of you for being here, Reimagine for this platform, and Nina for introducing us. I'm Annah Elizabeth, and I am a healing specialist. Everything that I do centers around helping you heal conflict and grief. I have pioneered a revolutionary program and concept around loss, grief, and healing. It's called the 5 Facets Philosophy on Healing. It's been introduced around the world to wide reviews. I've been in this space for a long time. My firstborn son died on May 11th of 1990 following unexpected delivery complications. And everything that I do helps us to know that, number one, full spectrum healing is possible. I'm a life and spiritual coach. I'm an energy medicine practitioner and teacher. I'm an international medium, and I work in the space of what I call both the human and the soul aspects of the self with what I call a heal it your way approach. So whatever you are open to, I meet you where you're at. And those are the tools that I have to help you navigate whatever it is. What I like to say is where you're at, where do you want to go, and how can I help you get there? So it's my honor to work with you and to support you and to be in this amazing community with all of these other helpers and supporters.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Elreacy Dock. I am a thanatologist, a doctor of behavioral health, a certified grief educator, and the president of the National Home Funeral Alliance. I work one-on-one with people usually, but other than that, I am an educator, so I spend a lot of time leaning into that to ensure that other people know how to interact with those who are grieving and to guide people along the way when they are either at the end of life or grieving a loss, whether it is the loss of a person or a non-death loss, such as something that happens in our lifespan. Um, I am so grateful to be here not only with my colleagues, but with each of you and to hear your experiences and to share in this space with you. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you all. And my name is Nina Rodriguez. As I said earlier, I'm a grief guide and creator and host of the Grief and Light podcast. My journey with grief started with the loss of my brother. His name's Joseph in 2019. He was my only sibling. And although I've experienced multiple losses, that loss is the loss that cracked me open and changed everything about my life and how I show up in the world, including getting into grief work. I got my certification with Megan Devine. She's the author of It's Okay That You're Not Okay. And I've met this beautiful group of speakers we have today. And one thing that I invite you to notice as we proceed with the conversation is how there's no quote unquote like right way to grieve, but there are helpful ways to grieve. And we're going to talk about what those are. And also that everybody grieves differently. My grief and my process is going to be different than your grief and your process. And that includes the speakers, how we approach our topics of how we approach grief and the way in which we navigate it. So let me see if I can get this image on here. Give me 1 second. I want to share this. Please let me know if you can see the purple screen. Yes. Okay, perfect. So I want to talk about this image because as a baseline, grief is a normal human response to loss and life-altering change. And so if we part from that premise and instead of seeing it as a pathology, as something that needs to be fixed, if we just embrace it as just our normal response to loss and life-altering change, it empowers us and it changes how we can approach our grief and our loss and how we move through it. And one distinction I would like to make here is that there are two things that, to put it in very simple terms, two elements to grief. And it's the pain and the suffering. The pain is the fixed element, and that is my person died. I lost my pet. I lost my health. I lost my home, my job, whatever loss we experienced, and that cannot be undone. So we're not talking about fixing the unfixable. We're talking about that's the part that we accept and tend to. And then there's the suffering, which is the dynamic elements, which is how do we approach our grief? Do we approach it with guilt and pain and shoulds and should nots? Or do we embrace it as a normal part of our grieving? So the part that we are going to be talking about today in today's conversation is more centered around the suffering, the dynamic elements, the parts that are actually under our control, if you will. And that differs for everybody. Grief is I define it as the overarching experience, the label for the overarching experience. It's not one feeling, it's just the big experience of life after loss. Grieving is very unique to each of us and it changes with time. It's our relationship to the experience of grief. And so I would like to part from that premise. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here as we continue with the conversations to make it clear that we are talking about the suffering, the dynamic element part of grief and loss and moving through the holidays. So with that said, I would like to invite our speakers to start the conversation. And my first question, I just lost my screen. Give me 1 second. My first question to everybody is, what does honoring yourself through the holidays mean to you personally? What does honoring yourself through the holidays mean to you personally? And we can go in the same order, starting with Susie, if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you, Nina. So for me, it means boundaries. It means, which is hard for me. I'm not saying boundaries are easy at all, particularly when you're in a tender place, particularly when We're talking about a loss that affects you, but also probably is affecting other people in your community, your circle, your family, or friends. But I'll speak to my own experience. For me, it's around checking in with myself about what is right for me and knowing that really I'm the person who I need to take care of in this moment. I'm the person who I need to honor while I'm in grief for any of the reasons that we have grief. And I'll speak to my own experience. My grief, though I've lost lots of people, my grief was more around um, life changes that were just incredibly painful. A divorce, coming out of the closet late in life, how that affected all the dynamics in my family. And so I would say that the most important thing for approaching the holidays is to honor yourself and figure out when you need to say no and giving yourself permission to do that. And
Thank you, Susie.
I'll be complete with that.
Thank you, Susie. So for me, it comes down to being aware and mindful of how certain things feel to me. Invitations to parties, baking the traditional Christmas cookies, doing things that feel heavy, kind of checking in with my energy and the energy of whatever the thing is. The people to be around, the places to go, all of that. Doing the things that I should do. If it feels like like I should do that, but I don't really, it doesn't light me up. It doesn't bring me any sense of relief. Doesn't bring me any sense of peace or joy. Then yes, saying no, similar to what Susie's talking about, the boundaries. Protecting my energy in a way that is going to serve me and the people closest to me, like my family. Not running myself ragged to the point where I am short or nasty with my family, or not being able to do the things that I really want to do. And what's underneath that is there's grief. The grief is just like a hum underneath all of it for me, right? So I have to be aware that if I get tight, if I get nasty, if I get short, if I get frustrated, I have to check in with my grief barometer. Like, where am I with that? Because that's usually the thing that's stoking that flame of just discomfort in myself and then affecting other people, right? Being mindful about how my behavior is affecting other people. Even though I am grieving, my family knows that, my husband knows that, they cut me slack, but I have to be responsible for my own behavior. Also, not doing anything that reminds me of like negative experiences. Like I've definitely had, some stuff in childhood. So my brother is my person, and Christmas was his holiday. But there are some memories that I wish I didn't have around the holiday. So anything that feels like it's gonna throw me back, trigger me, I steer clear of. And even for Thanksgiving, we're traveling. I'm going to the beach on Thanksgiving. My mom's gonna meet us there, and that's, I'm not doing it. So that's what I do. Thanks.
I think the next person is Anna.
Yes, hi. So I have a Healing Through the Holidays event series, 5-week series that I've been doing since 2012. And the honoring yourself during the holidays, it's what I call 5 'tis the season tips, which are asking for help, setting boundaries, letting go, being flexible, and self-care. If I had to choose one of them to answer this question, it would be being flexible. And the reason that I say that is because we have with holidays and other celebratory events, there tends to be a lot of tradition, ritual, expectations. And sometimes we want to step out when we're hurting and to try something and to go to an event, but we're not really sure when our grief is going to surface or when something is going to trigger us. Or we think we're going to have the energy to do the baking or host the event or send out the greeting cards, any of those things, insert your whatever, as I like to say. And so I think that if I had to choose one for this, it would be being flexible. Allow yourself the space and the grace. And this is what has really helped me over the years, is to know that I can change my mind based on how I'm feeling. If I'm triggered, then I can choose to be flexible and let go of some of that perfectionistic. And I am a recovering perfectionist, I said earlier, as many of us are. And so, yeah, that has really helped me to know that I can pivot with grace, and I can give myself grace and trust that the people in my community are also going to be understanding of that.
Thanks, Anna. I would have to say, honoring myself usually involves me considering what I deem a grief budget. So the grief budget is comprised of, if you're familiar with spoon theory and you only have so many spoons that you can use if you have a chronic illness, then the grief budget is similar to this. It's the idea that um, you can do certain things, but everything involves energy and you are spending that energy. And so from a neuroscientific perspective, we know that when we are grieving, people experience psychological and emotional exhaustion, but one of the reasons why that psychological exhaustion occurs is because the brain is trying to accommodate and understand what has happened after a loss. And so I'm already tired psychologically, right? And then you add in physically, emotionally, spiritual distress, you name it. So when I'm faced with something, I really ask myself, how much do I have in my grief budget? How much is it going to cost me to participate in this experience that I do not want to be involved in, or to, you know, humor whatever request has been made or whatever demand has been made. And if I don't have enough in my grief budget for that, then I just sit that aside and I sit it out. Um, I think that some of this also correlates likely with our own personal threshold that we all have for handling stress and handling all sorts of challenges and difficulties that we face in life. But ultimately, if it's costing too much energy, I'm just not going to do it.
Thank you, Dr. Elreacy Dock. And same, I love this concept of the grief budget. Thank you for sharing that. That definitely resonates. For me, that looks like being honest about what it is that I need, and honoring myself is being at peace with the decision to do or not do, or, sit this one out. Whatever I decide in that moment, allowing myself to not have the inner turmoil of maybe I should have gone, maybe I shouldn't have gone, just that inner talk that, even though, let's say, I didn't go to the party with the intention to rest, I'm home ruminating on that. So instead, it's just releasing that and saying, I'm honoring this decision and it's okay. I'm allowed to grieve. Permission, I give myself permission to grieve, and I give myself permission to either sit this one out or participate up to a certain point. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It could also be engaging for a certain amount of time and then pulling back whenever it feels a little too overwhelming. And then Susie says, and realize that the budget has a threshold. When it is tapped out, I have nothing much left. Exactly. The next question is, many people struggle with traditions, whether to keep them, change them, or let them go altogether. How have you approached this in your own experience? And we could either go in the same order or whoever feels called to answer that. So how have you approached the struggle with tradition, the decisions on what to do with each tradition? whoever would like to talk.
I guess I'll jump in. Oh,
It's okay, go ahead.
okay. For me, Christmas has always been a big event for me, my favorite time of the year. I decorated inside and outside, and 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I started going through divorce, and as many times they are, it wasn't an easy process to go through. And what I found is I was really struggling because I thoroughly enjoy the decorating, but I didn't have the bandwidth. I didn't have the budget for it. And it reminded me, it was a painful reminder of what was missing in my life. And so for me, scaling back is the way that I manage that. I really wanted the lights and a little touch. So I had a little mini Christmas tree that I set up next to the sofa with a reindeer, and I enjoyed that. I made that the focus of what I wanted. And so really scaling back and doing something that's meaningful, that is within, and I really love that term, Elreacy, the grief budget. So yeah, whatever is within that, within your tolerance, honoring what you need and letting go of those other things, and knowing that it doesn't have to be forever. It can be temporary. It's your choice.
Thank you for that, Anna. So I don't know if I mentioned the cookies before. I may have talked about baking cookies at our family. I'm Italian, and there's like long line of women who would spend like weeks baking cookies for Christmas. And my mom did it a little bit more scaled down, but it was still a lot. And it felt like this pressure to continue doing that. I did it. I was pregnant, I remember one year, and my back was killing me. I was on my feet for hours. I would sit down here and there, but I felt this pressure to like bake these cookies, or else it felt like I was like betraying the family lineage or something. And grief is so amazing because it really shows all these other dysfunctional ways that I'd been living and what was not serving me anymore. And I was forced to make some changes in order to survive. Really, I'm sober, and being true to myself and being honest with myself is like our cardinal rule, rigorous honesty. So I had to check in and say, why am I doing this? Like my kids are doing, like we're doing, and I'm like, it's not fun. I'm not having fun. I'm worried about the crumbs on the floor. I'm not having fun doing this. So we scaled it back, like to Anna's point. We bake cookies we want to bake. We have our own recipe. We have cookie cutters. We're not using the stupid press. Like we make it simple so that it's enjoyable. So how can I maybe not throw away the whole tradition, but modify it in a way that works for me and is actually fun and not grueling? Because if I'm miserable doing that, then it's just like that spiral. The next thing I know, I'm up in my bedroom crying. It's like one thing leads to another. So that's what I do.
I saw a lot of head nods with that one, Amanda.
Yes.
I hope a lot of people resonate with that. And I want to honor one thing. I was going through the comments that a lot of people in here have named being both helpers to others in grief, supporters and service providers, and also grievers themselves. So it's a both and type of situation. So feel free to share in the chat what has worked for you as well, or something that you struggle with. So maybe the other side of that coin. And then I don't know who was next. Maybe Susie. Susie, would you like to answer that one next?
I would. Yeah. I think one thing I want to name is that, if we've had a loss or we are in a new chapter of life, and and when I say we've had a loss, I mean loss of a person or a beloved being, or we're in a new chapter. For instance, we've moved to a new place and we're not near family anymore, and we cannot go be with family and do traditions the way we have in the past. I think one thing that's really important is to check in with yourself when you're asking yourself, should I do this the way I've always done it? And it feels almost impossible. And your answer is, I have to, because I'll otherwise be letting everyone else down. I think the first thing to do is to check with other people. What do they need? They may not need you to show up the way you've always shown up. They may actually be capable of, of stepping in and doing part of it themselves. Or it could turn into a really rich family discussion of how do we recreate and co-create a new way to celebrate a holiday, because we have to face the fact that things have changed. And this is something that came up really beautifully in some of the different presentations earlier today, how grief changes us. And I think Sundari did something with water, and she talked about, water being this reminder of this force in our life that changes, affects us and leaves us changed. And grief is like that as well. And so that grief that's changed you is also going to change how you celebrate a holiday. And I think it's okay, and you can give yourself permission, and you have to be brave to bring that up with your people. Bring it up and say, we have to do this differently. So that's part of what I'm thinking about. I'll let someone else talk.
I would have to say, I really love what was said about recreating and co-creating a new way of doing this. And that's what I've done in the past. For me, the holidays were something that my grandmother absolutely loved. Like, she would decorate the house and do all of the traditional colors. And then we'd have to drive up and down the street looking at all the decorated houses and all of these things. And my grandmother, I'm named after her. So every time I hear the name Elreacy, I think of her, right? And so what I've learned as a thanatologist and as a grief educator is that over time we find a way to reintegrate whom or what we've lost into our lives. And certainly right after I lost her, it was too painful and I just decided to back away from all of it. But then there are holidays and there are seasons where I decide, you know what, I feel like incorporating something. And so I remember one year I got a little miniature Christmas tree and I decorated it in, I want to say like purple and blue, which would have been atrocious to my grandmother, but I decorated a tree and she would have loved that, you know? So I do little things to remind myself of her. But I will say that, outside of that, it varies. Sometimes I want to celebrate and I want to do a tradition because it makes me feel good. Other times I just want to do a different spin on it. And sometimes I don't want to do anything at all. And that's completely okay.
I love that purple and what was it? Purple and blue tree.
Yeah.
It feels festive to me. I love that. Thank you. For me, I keep going back to this phrase, what doesn't bend breaks. I forget who that quote is from, but I heard it from my mom, and it's something that's been a guiding light, because at the end of the day, a lot of that rigidity around traditions, they can be wonderful if everyone is present and we have everything we need and everything is on time and perfect. And when we lose our person or pet or have a life altering change, everything shifts. So releasing that rigidity and embracing change. And for example, the first year of loss, I remember, I think we ate like Chinese food for New Year's and went to bed at like 9 or something. And we just didn't put the pressure, because I said to my mom, you lost your son. What is there to celebrate in this moment? Right. At least that first year, it was very sudden, very recent. However, not attributing a sense of permanency in our minds to think every holiday is going to look like this. Just leaving enough space for maybe the next one might look a little different and the next one might look a little different. So if grief feels unbearable and unrelenting this year for you, just understand that maybe this year you honor that and it won't look like that forever. So it's releasing that sense of permanency in our minds with how things will look like from now on, quote unquote. I'm using air quotes here. So the next question is, what has helped you communicate your needs to others during this season? It is so important to know A, what we need, and B, how to communicate that to our loved ones and friends and family. I see, let's see, Amanda, would you like to answer that one?
My circle has gotten a lot smaller, I think, since my loss, since really what my loss did, and I said it earlier, like it made me really meet my true self and know who I want in my life, who I trust, and the people that I have in my life that I trust, I feel comfortable sharing with. Don't really have like sharing or creating that I don't want to go there, or I need this, or I don't want that, or whatever. I feel very comfortable. So that anxiety is kind of has lifted, where before my loss and my healing process, I was afraid to set those boundaries. I was afraid to communicate my needs. So now I do it very simply. I don't go into a big diatribe. I don't think there's no need for justification, rationalization, anything. I don't owe anybody an explanation. It's basically, I'm kind about it. I'm compassionate toward the person that might be looking to do something for me or throw the party or let's do the Kris Kringle, the gift exchange. You know, if that's not something that I feel that I can handle, adding one more thing on my plate during the holidays, I will simply say, I think it's a wonderful idea. Thank you so much for creating a space like that. I think it's beautiful, but I'm going to just pass on this one, you know, and no is a complete sentence. That's it. You know, there's no need for me to go into this whole long explanation. And if I do feel that need, that's what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little light bulb moment for me of awareness of why. Why do I feel the need to do that? And kind of looking within a little bit and saying what in me needs to be soothed. What breath do I need to take? What grounding do I need to do? What do I need to write? Journaling. Where am I lost and abandoning myself in this moment, right? And kind of looking at that if I'm having a hard time setting those boundaries.
Thank you, Amanda. Graceful boundaries, Yasmin commented. I love that. Yes, graceful boundaries. Anna, would you like to go next? I see you on my screen.
There we go. There we go. I will, and I'm actually going to piggyback on the last word that Amanda said, which is boundaries. So oftentimes, and my experience for a very long time was I was asking for support and I wasn't receiving that support from the people that were closest to me. And one of the things that I learned is that the self boundaries, what we set for ourselves, really are the most important boundaries because they're the only things that we can fully control. And Amanda said that right at the end about what boundaries she was setting for herself. What am I willing to do? What do I need in the moment? And then allowing some flexibility in that as well. And Susie talked about boundaries in the very beginning, and it truly is one of the 5 tips, 'tis the season tips. And so, and I want to piggyback by saying the people closest to me, I wasn't getting the support that I need. Sometimes I found the greatest support from people that I didn't know. I would have an exchange in the grocery store. I have a friend who says that I will talk to rocks. I strike up a conversation with anybody pretty much anywhere, and inevitably something will come up. What do you do? And I mentioned that I help people with conflict and grief, and everybody's had some sort of loss. And there's oftentimes been an exchange with a complete stranger that has actually helped me. And so thinking, outside of the box, that sometimes there are people outside of that really close-knit circle that we tend to think we can rely on. There are other people who can really provide golden nuggets too.
Thank you, Anna. Elreacy?
So I would probably wager that, communication is usually something that has been difficult for me in the past because I'm one of those people that's always trying to anticipate every possible outcome and every possible response, and that's just not humanly possible, right? But what I have learned is I really value transparency. And so, what I've learned to communicate is like, hey, I'm having a really heavy day right now. I don't have the capacity to do, X, Y, or Z. I really appreciate that you invited me to this or that you want to do this. Maybe we could revisit it at another time. I might not be feeling it now, but maybe next week or something like that. If it's not something that I feel I'll have capacity for in the future, then I'm just honest about that. I'm like, you know what? This is really tender for me. It reminds me of something that I haven't yet been able to bridge the gap over. And, I would appreciate it if I could just sit this one out.
I don't have a lot more to add, but I want to say I'm actually curious how many of you who are listening, if you want to just wave your hand or click the raise hand or a thumbs up, how many of you feel like it sounds great to have boundaries, but I'm not sure even how to communicate them to my family, my children, my parents, the people with whom I have the most complicated relationships. And two, or B, um, I don't have the energy to have boundaries with my grief because all I can say is boundaries are hard enough for me as it is. But when I have deep grief, I'm not resourced to do this work. It's hard, it's overwhelming. And I see lots of hands and thumbs up. And so I feel you in that. I get it. And I think then what it really comes back to is finding a way to just be really clear with yourself that you get to take care of yourself and do whatever it is, even if it's sending an email so you don't have to have the one on the person to person conversation. If sending an email is the way you can communicate with people, then that's a great way to do it. And you know what? Even if you're not, I mean, when Amanda described how she did it, how she communicates with people, I'm just like in awe because that's really hard for me. And I've been working on this for a long time. But what that makes me think of is also you may not be able to be as kind as that. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay. Even if you misstep, even if you don't say it in the perfect way that other people can hear it, it'll be okay.
The
That is
word that just keeps jumping out at me is modify. Modify, modify, modify. So if you're not in a place where you feel like you're ready to, or that you can handle any more grief, pain in the, from other people, maybe you don't have to like bow out completely or put yourself in a situation where then you're going to have to hear it from them or whatever, maybe you can show up in a way that also works for you, but you're still involved with them. You know what I mean? So getting very creative, getting very creative. There's a lot of gray. Doesn't have to be black or white. Doesn't have to be yes or no. right? Modify that communication, that interaction to where it works for you. And it's also satisfying them to some degree so that you don't have to then deal with more on top of what you already are. That's a great point, Susie.
Yes, I second that. And I noticed here in the chat, I think it was Julie said, although it's gotten less difficult over time since September 2023 when my mom died. And that's so true because it's something that each year it shifts a little bit and it may or may not get easier to say to people, or at least people understand that, hey, things have really changed. And oftentimes people invite us out of either ignorance or just like they mean well. Let's just put it that way. They usually mean well. They want to take us out of our grief. They want to take us somewhere new where we can feel joy again, perhaps not understanding that that's not what we need in that moment. We live in the context of a grief averse, grief illiterate society. So oftentimes we're met with responses that are counter to what we actually need in that moment. And then I see Yasmin says, I can communicate it. I'm not sure they get it. That made me laugh a little bit because it's so true, right? Like how many times we may have to repeat the same thing or word it differently or say, no, I don't want to go. So, it all depends. And also we do our best to be kind and communicate it clearly. And also we're not responsible for whether or not they get it. That's on them more than anything. Again, something that gets easier over time in theory. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And then somebody said, Corinne said, can you say something about unfinished business and grief? I love that. I don't know if that was specific to somebody, but Corinne, if you could put in the chat or whoever wants to take that question, can you say something about unfinished business and grief?
I'll jump in on that one. And really, for me personally, I shared earlier in my session, I've been going through recently a very challenging time with some people very close to me. And they're not open, and that unfinished business is a really good term for it. And honestly, the one thing I can say, it sounds cliche, it's working for me, and I know it's worked for me in the past and other people, and it's really moment by moment, honoring where you are in each moment. What bandwidth do you have to, and I come back to that grief budget, that's going to stick with me. But what do you have in the moment that you can handle, that you want to handle? What do you want to do? That may change 2 hours from now or 2 days from now. And remembering that really the only control that you have in a situation, the only boundaries that you have control over, the only happiness that you have control over is your own. And that can be hard to remember when we want something different with another person. We want a different experience with others, and it seems to be one-sided. So really just moment to moment and remembering, asking yourself, what do I need and want, and what can I expend? What the term that's coming to me is risk versus reward. What is your risk of continuing to reach out or asking for more versus what you think you might gain based on current data?
I can jump in. I am also thinking about the unfinished business we have with people who are gone, who will never have an opportunity to really work through it with. And I think that just reminds me that first of all, I think that that is a very common experience. So I think that we have to then, first of all, remember that grief is a journey. It's really an unfolding experience that takes it takes the rest of your life. It's the thing that you are going to keep processing particular relationships for a very long time until you get to a place of feeling settled, if you do. But when it's coming up around the holidays, this unfinished business, I'm thinking that means conflictual emotions, and that reminds me of Elreacy's talk earlier with the emotions wheel, because it's like there's so many things that we are feeling when we're feeling grief. Grief is almost an umbrella term that and underneath that are so many feelings, including resentment, guilt, anger, frustration, sadness, isolation, loneliness, the emptiness. So when you have all that unfinished business, I would say leaning into remembering what the tools are that you have, and keep just being open to the feelings being there. I say with my people, I always say, invite it in. Invite those feelings in. Invite that discomfort around what's unfinished, the argument you can't get out of your head that you had before they died, and allow it to come in and do something with it. So, write about it, make art about it, talk to someone about it, have dreams about it, just allow it in, because the more we keep the door closed on it, the louder it's going to keep knocking at the door. It wants your attention. And so when we give our grief our attention, that's when it sort of it gives a sigh of relief, like, oh, she gave me the attention I needed in this moment. I can sort of relax now. It will come back most likely, but at least in that moment, you've sort of released some of the pressure that is building up around it. I hope that makes sense.
Very much, and I feel like we could all go home now because that was amazing, Susie. Thank you.
Elreacy or Amanda, if you'd like to chime in on that, otherwise we'll keep it moving.
I'm good. I have nothing else to add.
I will add, I guess I'll tackle this from two different perspectives. So on one hand, if you have unfinished business with a person who is still alive, I think it's important to recognize that you are not only grieving that unfinished business with that person, you are experiencing secondary losses. So you are grieving over the loss of expectations, the dreams, the hopes that you had with and for that person. You're grieving over what that relationship is and what it is not. You're grieving over safety, security. Sometimes you're grieving over a change in identity because your identity and your dynamics within that relationship change when you have unfinished business with someone else. So there are many different things that you are grieving all at once. And I think it's really important to just be mindful of that and be patient with yourself. In the context of unfinished business with someone who has died, I will say that something that has been helpful for me personally is writing out a letter to that person, writing out everything that I want to say to them that I can't say to them to their face anymore. And then what I do is I keep that letter for a couple of days, a week. I revisit it when I'm no longer in that intense emotional state of being. And then I destroy it and I let it go. Some people like to, set it on fire. You can tear it up, you can bury it, whatever, but I let it go. And that has been really helpful to me in the past. It lets me feel like I've finished something with them.
I actually take it back. I have something to add.
Go for it.
As usual. I'm a Gemini. I can't help it. I like to talk. Okay. I can finish the business with my departed. I can talk to them. I can communicate. I can tap into their spirit, their energy, and we can have a conversation to whatever extent you believe in that. But I feel like I can tell I've had lots of loss, not just my brother, but I can talk to those people. Like my cousin died, she overdosed 4 months before my brother. And she was in my wedding. And she was like really resistant. Like she hated the dress. She didn't want to wear the shoes. Like it was like a whole thing. She like walked in flip-flops. Like it was just like a whole thing. And we fought a lot, not just about that, but about other things. And I've made peace with her, you know, and I try to tap in and say, what would she want to say to me now? What do I think she might want to say to me now? You know, and we've made up and we're good. So you can finish the business now. Part
Thank
like what
you.
Elreacy is saying with the letter.
Thank you, Amanda. And that touches on the topic of continuing bond theory. For anybody who may not be familiar, it's the theory that death ends a life, but not, it doesn't have to end the relationship we have with our person or pet. And so we get to define what that looks like. Obviously, it's not going to be the same, but we get to decide if we want a relationship, what that looks like, and how to communicate. We learn our own language. Grief in itself is a language, and you could take it to another, level if in the ways in which you communicate to somebody, either through prayer, meditation, writing, whatever way resonates with you. And on that note, what are some meaningful ways to include or remember loved ones during holiday traditions if that feels comforting? And for the sake of time, I'm going to throw a second part to that question. If remembering feels painful, what is a gentler alternative? So, two questions. What are meaningful ways to include or remember loved ones in holiday traditions? And if that feels too painful, what is an alternative? Whoever feels called to start with this one. Susie, you want to go?
No, sorry. I was just putting the question in the chat. I'll let someone else do it. Now I'll think about it now.
I'll go ahead and jump in. There's many ways that I've seen people over the years. Sometimes people will set an empty space at the table, but they'll do it intentionally. So oftentimes with the death of a loved one, people talk about the empty chair at the table. And oftentimes I know many people who actually are intentional about that. So it's like the sacred space, like that person's energy is there. Many people will have particular rituals that they follow. I myself, I shared this morning. Now, it wasn't around Christmas, but it was around my son's 25th birthday. I had a piece of artwork commissioned around an event that actually happened. So piggybacking on what several of my colleagues said is we can actually still create memories with someone after they're deceased. It's just, it looks different. So I have so many stories. I never knew my son alive. His three siblings who came after him, they never knew him alive. And yet we have many stories that involve him in different activities. So that is something that you can do. Sometimes people will purchase ornaments or something sentimental around that. For many of the earlier years, I purchased an ornament for each of my living kids, and I had something for Gavin that was commemorative. And then if it's too painful, honor that. Honestly, that's the biggest thing that I can say. Sometimes, and we talked about this, it's common, many people feel comfortable saying the name. And in my presentation this morning, I always speak Gavin's name. And I didn't this morning, and somebody said, what's his name? If that is comfortable for you, say their name. And if it's not, then know that that is okay. I've encountered many, many people over the years who hearing their loved one's name is painful. And so being able to acknowledge that and know that there's absolutely nothing wrong with you if that's the case, that honor where you are and do what you need to do to protect your space and your mind and your heart.
For me, I feel like my relationship, especially with my brother, has actually grown, like we were talking about before a little bit. Like these relationships do not have to end. And we play a lot of music, you know. My family loves music. So when we're cooking or we're baking or we're decorating the tree, you know, I will intentionally put on the Chipmunks Christmas because that was my brother's favorite. Or I'll play the Beach Boys Christmas album, which is my favorite. And we listened to it growing up. My dad played it a lot, you know. So just I try to expand my relationship with my brother specifically, and just keeping him close in those moments and just communicating, just kind of connecting with him in some way. And when it gets too painful, because it usually does, I usually start out in a good, and then I start to really feel, I excuse myself and I go outside or I go somewhere else and I shed a few tears, you know, and I personally believe in something greater, a higher power, God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it. I don't have a name for it. I ask that thing to come comfort me. I ask that spirit of love to come comfort me. And then I return back, right? So taking a break when I need to. Um, yeah, music is the big way that I remember Jeremy.
I was thinking about different ways that you can bring people you've lost into the current tradition and gatherings. And one would be to just have like a bulletin board up or some cork board and have people invite everyone to bring photographs of whoever is gone, you know. And even if you haven't done it in the past, you can start a new tradition and include more than just the most recent losses. You can record, you know, bring in grandparents and people who've been gone for a long time, but it's a beautiful way to create this like community of the family, the history on this board for that event. And, you know, bringing them in, inviting the ancestors in or the folks, the loved ones in. And another way you could do it is just with string, you know, hanging strings across a window and hang with little clips, like just clothespins, clip the pictures on. Just, you know, inviting in the memories with the visuals of the photographs, or creating an altar, co-creating a family altar where you add lots of photographs or things that were, you know, the objects they left behind that were important to them, like their watch or their, you know, whatever it was, right? There's so many different things that could be, or making flower arrangements with their favorite flowers. You know, there's just so many ways, and that just goes back to what Amanda said, bringing in the music of the people and all the different ways, all the sensory baking the recipes that they cooked. So you have those flavors. And again, going back to everything we've said already, which is don't push yourself past your budget. You know, don't spend your whole budget on it. Save something for yourself. Do one thing, do one little thing, make an invitation, and then you don't have to do the whole thing, you know, don't take that on. But there are lots of ways I think that we can bring people in who we've lost.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to echo what everyone else said. These are things I've done. Um, Music is a huge one, you know. I am someone who was raised by a previous generation, so I tend to play a lot of oldies. I play like Frank Sinatra and Nat King Cole, and that gives me the warm memories I need for the holidays. But I'm also really into the use of objects, you know? So if you have items or even fragrances or you name it that sort of anchors you to your person, I like to incorporate that sometime. Food is a great one. If there's like a favorite meal they had or a snack or something that just reminds you of them, I do that. Um, and inevitably, sometimes it does get too painful. And when that happens, I just go and I cry it out. I think that, crying is very healthy. It's okay to cry. We certainly are in a world where we need more compassion, and one way to show compassion to others is to support them when they cry and not to tell them to bottle it in. So you might see me crying for a little bit, and then I'll wipe my tears and get back up and go do whatever it is I have to do. But it's important to feel that emotion and let it out and let it flow through me.
Thank you. One way that we celebrated was, sometimes people find it confronting or too hard to deal with if it's openly talking about the person that has been gone. Not everybody embraces that, and that's okay. Some people are a little bit more avoidant. Like I think it was Anna who said, saying their name is not always a helpful thing to people. So one thing that we did as a quiet option was we put a jar with a photo of my brother and some paper, little strips of paper where people could write messages in the moments that they felt like they missed him, or they wanted to communicate with him, or just share a thought in connection with him. And it was in the living room area, but not front and center. So that way people could have a private moment if they so chose to. We're not ignoring it, we're not neglecting it, but it's also not in everybody's face for the holidays. So that was a very helpful way of honoring the both and of missing him, especially that first year. And I want to acknowledge here a lot of comments. There've been a lot of comments here, which thank you so much. I love it. Lighting candles, that is very special. And how Kathy said she has an ofrenda, which is usually like an altar, like a mini altar in the dining room for her mother. And Erin has a question that I would like to pose for the speakers, which is a layered question, but a very important question. So she says, I lost my mom 3 years ago, and I'm so sorry, Erin. You lost her traumatically, and she was present. Erin says, I've been slowly progressing, and I'd like to say I'm in the phase of acceptance. As the holidays are approaching this year, it has been feeling a lot harder, and I keep reliving the moment of her death. I just don't know what to do except avoid and cry. First of all, I'm so sorry. And I want to name one thing that's really important. Not all grief carries trauma, but all trauma carries grief. And so you mentioned the word trauma here a few times, and I'm so sorry you had that. That is a layer, an additional layer that a lot of people, let's say if you lose grandma at the age of 150, the way we would love them to live, and peacefully on her deathbed versus a very traumatic loss, you are going to grieve differently because the way in which they passed impacts how you grieve and the layers that you have to navigate through. So if somebody has perhaps some words for Erin here on honoring her mom during this holiday when it feels very traumatic to do so.
Nina, how many years did you say
3.
it had been? 3. So I am going to jump in here. In the years that I've been doing this work, one of the things that I found, I've had so many people reach out to me who are in their 3rd year of loss, and they find that it's as difficult as when it was fresh and raw. And my belief around that and experience and the research that I've done is this: in the first year, it's what I call taking care of business. There's all these new things that we have to navigate. There's possibly estates, there's funerals, there's things that we are doing, and our body has a natural shock protection. So even though we're feeling the pain, it really is, we are sort of, that's I don't want to say minimized, but it's reduced a little bit because of the natural shock. Now, when we move into the 2nd year, we start experiencing more of those firsts, the first holidays, the first anniversaries, the first deathversary, all of those things in the 2nd year that are painful reminders, and our natural shock protection now is diminishing. We have less of that. As we move into the 3rd year, generally speaking, not always, but the taking care of business is done. We've gone through the whole first year of firsts and maybe a few seconds, and now we're faced with the finality. that our loved one is not coming back and that shock protection is gone. And I've seen this play out many times with people. It doesn't make what you're going through any easier. And yet, hopefully, knowing that you're not alone in this will help you, and that the explanation will help you understand what you're experiencing. Because the people that I have worked with, their biggest thing is, I don't understand why this feels as bad, if not worse, than it did in the beginning. So hopefully that will help you. And then again, the biggest thing that I can share with you, I call everybody neighbors. I say we're neighbors in grief and allies in healing, and it's just honor where you're at. Know that this is what you are experiencing right now, and allow yourself to have what I call those micro moments of healing. It could be to cry, as Elreacy said, crying is therapeutic. Amanda talked about, she goes and takes a break. Allow yourself to cry when you feel like crying. Allow yourself to smile when you feel like smiling. What brings you comfort? Lean into that. For me, it's watching a really feel-good movie. That's different for everybody. Going for a walk. Honestly, just understanding that it's not uncommon, and then leaning into, again, what brings you some, what I say, modicum of comfort. I hope that helps. And my heart is with all of you.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, that year somebody mentioned the permanence of it, the second, third, and for what it's worth, Erin, I feel like my shock started to wear off around 3.5 years. So it took a lot longer than I ever expected, and a lot longer than society tells us grief lasts. And I'm still grieving after that. It's just that very intense, the intensity subsided after 3.5 years. So your own timing is your own timing, and honoring that is oftentimes more helpful than trying to force anything other than what is. Thank you so much for that question.
Can I just respond to that too?
Absolutely.
Is that right? I really appreciated, Anna, what you shared as well, and Nina as well. I think it's really helpful to put our grief into a framework that isn't just best wishes on your journey, but like there's actual experience and research, and you're not alone in having this experience. I also want to say, especially because you talked about the trauma and that you're like reliving her traumatic death, that there are techniques like EMDR that help you process trauma and release it. And those, it might be a moment to lean into or look into that kind of work, because it might help you move through it. But also importantly, just to echo what Anna and Nina said, just remember that your journey is your journey, and it's your timeline, and it's really not a surprise that it gets harder, and then it like ebbs and flows as you go on this path. So yeah, my heart's with you, Erin.
And Kathy here says, but those unexpected moments, a smell, a song, driving past something, the coffee aisle at the store. Yes, Kathy, triggers still 12 years later. And doesn't that speak to grief truly has no timeline. The difference is perhaps that we grow around our grief, and those grief waves, we learn how to surf, if you will, them a little bit better, how to navigate them a little bit better with time and with permission, as we give ourselves permission to grieve. Amanda, would you like to chime in?
I always say time does not heal wounds. It teaches us to manage wounds, right? So how I respond now, yes, I might still cry, and sometimes I cry hard, right? But I have tools now. I can, call somebody. I can do something that feels good, right? In those early days, I had no tools. A lot of despair, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. The pain was just enormous. But over time, I have learned. I like to look at those random moments, the smell, the whatever it is, driving past the place, whatever we lived in New York, I live in Colorado, but just, things like that. I like to think it's a little nudge from my brother saying, hi, here I am. So I reframe it to being this really painful experience to something that I can feel grateful for.
And I see here Karen said, one of the things is so hard. I'm sorry, it's so hard and I feel so sad about is not being able to say goodbye. Any words for those of us who didn't get to say goodbye?
As a spiritual medium who connects people with their loved ones, what I can tell you is that you can still say goodbye. And your loved one will hear you. And you can ask a question. You can ask them a question. And one of the things when I help people connect with their own intuition, and I always share with people, when you ask a question of them, when you get an answer, we hear it in our head in our own voice. And so we tend to doubt or dismiss that we're actually getting a response from them. Sometimes we will get a thought in our head and it is actually a response from them. And then sometimes we see the synchronistic signs from the spirit world, the feathers, the coins, the hummingbirds, the dragonflies, the birds, whatever that is for you. But you can still say goodbye. And it was someone mentioned, one of the presenters, and forgive me, I don't remember who, about writing a letter and burning it. I think it was Elreacy, burning it, dissolving it in water. But you can still say goodbye. It's just different. It's different than having them in front of you, but you can still say that. And as someone who's connected with the spirit world, they will hear you. That is my personal belief. So if that resonates with you, take that and use it.
Let me know if anybody else would like to chime in or if we're... In the meantime, Trish asks, photos are, or she commented, photos are hard. Well, meaning my family put all, so her family put all her sister's photos away when they visited, thinking they were protecting her. But instead, it felt like her sister was forgotten. This was less than 6 months after she passed. Her mom and herself both have many photos of her sister in her home. So, what would you say, either from experience or on the topic of, do we leave their pictures out? Do we put their things away? When do we make those decisions? Any wisdom would be appreciated.
I think Anna's spoken to this, that it's really personal, like different for some people. It's just so painful to see the photo, and for some to not have the photo is to like an erasure of the person. So I think again we're coming back to the topic of checking in with yourself. What are your needs? Also communication with the people you're with, and really remembering that you you don't have to take care of everyone else around this. If you need their pictures out, put their pictures out. Like don't have your decision be that you're taking care of everyone else around this. What do you need? Check in with that and do that. And remember, this is what my wife tells me, you're gonna disappoint people. So just accept that. You're gonna disappoint people, but the person you don't want to disappoint is you.
Yes, Susie, great sage. You're saying, dropping such great truth bombs. Thank you. I think I had Jeremy's picture up in my kitchen for 2 years, maybe. And at some point, I decided it needed to come down because it really just kept triggering me and bringing me back to severe pain. So he comes to me as a crow. So now I have crows around. I have a beautiful crow in flight, soaring free, like in my in my bedroom framed. And I look at that, and that's how I like to remember him or think that he is right now, is just soaring free. Because like I mentioned, I don't know if I said he overdosed, he suffered from addiction. So I believe he's out of that pain and that torture that he lived in. So I prefer to look at that crow flying free and think of him like that. I think the picture, he was smiling. I think it was my wedding. He was smiling, but it just has a different feel. It's a little bit, it's not, it's not him, it's a crow, but it's symbolic of him. So again, that modification, of like it's him, but not really, So that's what works for me.
I would say, if you are comfortable having the photos out, have them out. And the reason I am a supporter of this, there's two reasons. Number one, for some people, when you have photos out after you've lost a loved one, it triggers dopamine and oxytocin in your brain, and it helps you to feel a little bit better when you look at them. Number two, I know a lot of people who have lost children in particular where this comes up. And they keep the room that their child had in the exact same condition that it was before their child died. All of the items are there, everything is there. And they go into that room and it's a source of comfort for them. Now, there's a lot of parents that I've met who say, that's a little too much for me, that would be too painful. It varies for everyone. I don't think that there's a wrong or a right way for this. So if it brings you comfort, do it. And if you're someone who's inclined to keep lots of their items or have a space that just reminds you of them entirely, it's okay to go into that space. There's nothing wrong with it.
Thank you. And we're getting to the end here. So if anybody has any final questions or thoughts that you would like to share, I invite you to share it in the comments so we can address those. And at the end of the day, another thing to keep in mind is just because we lost one person, and I say we, let's say in a family or friend group, doesn't mean that everybody's grieving the same, even within the same family system. So parents could grieve differently, the children could grieve differently, and extended relatives can grieve differently. And just because somebody may be more averse to looking at a photo or may be more emotionally provoked by looking at a photo, so they put it away, doesn't necessarily mean that they don't care about that person. It may truly be too soon, too early, too painful for them, and they're honoring their own capacity in that regard. And so oftentimes it's hard to see that within a family system, especially I've heard about it in, let's say like one spouse is uh, thinking of the child they lost and they're looking at the pictures all the time. And then the other one puts everything away. And that could be very painful from each other's perspective, but just giving each other grace, extending that grace to ourselves as well, which is easier said than done. But, understanding that we all really, truly grieve so differently. And I see Yasmin says, I love to see the photos. It feels like a visit, and yet stumbling upon a picture unexpectedly gets me very emotional. Yes. So even that, definitely. And I don't see any other questions. So I would like to give a few minutes to Andy Ingall of Reimagine, who has a few announcements and some information that he would like to share. Are you here, Andy? I see you right there. Perfect.
Thank you so much, Nina. And also I want to thank Amanda, Elreacy, Susie, Anna, and Sundari from the previous session. Thank you all for organizing this. This is such an important time of year when we need this kind of support. And thanks to all of you for sticking it out today. I have a survey that I want to share with you, and I'm going to paste a link in the chat. This is a way for us to hear from you on what you think, what could be improved, what kind of programming you want to see at Reimagine. If you could fill that out for us, that would be great. I think this link may also be in the follow-up email that's going to go out. It may take us a bit of time to edit the videos, but I think what I'd like to do is send out the follow-up email with all of the resources ASAP, so you'll get that. And I'm hoping another email will go out with the videos when those are ready to send. And I also want to share this opportunity with all of you. Let me just share my screen. Hold on. Let's open this up. There we go. Okay, let's get this going. Hold on. Here we go. Okay. Bear with me. Yes, okay. So we have this online growth journey platform that's in development at Reimagine. It's not public yet, but this is a special opportunity for all of you to become beta testers of this. Today's workshops might have stirred something in you, a desire to stay connected. You might want more time to reflect on what you've heard today, to share, to stay close. We're going to give you special access to Reimagine's Growth Journey platform. And it's a new space we have built where you can continue the momentum of this experience in your own way. And let me get the next slide here. On this growth journey platform, you'll be able to share your adversity journeys, your grief journeys through reflections, creations, dreams, actions. And yes, because you're here today and you're part of this new Reimagine community, for those of you this is new, you can join the platform through one of our growth pathways. The pathway that we're offering to you is called Reimagine Life's Challenges, and it's an entry point to the site that offers wisdom and inspiration to help you deepen into reflection, creation, dreams, and action. It's totally free. And as early participants, your presence, voice, and feedback will help shape this for others. So I am now going to close my screen and share a link for you in the chat so you can start giving it a test drive. We're just asking all of you to register for it. Here we go. Into everyone. Bing. There is the link for the Growth Journey platform. Yes, we'd love you to become beta testers. You can begin the pathway whenever you're ready, or start exploring the site on your own. So that's all I have to share. I'm going to pass it back to all of you, our leaders, if you want to say any final words to these folks.
Thank you so much, Andy. I've put our contact information, and the link that Andy shared is also in the comments, as well as the one for the survey. So lots of goodies. That offering sounds amazing. And I want to turn the floor back to the speakers for any last words. And as they do that, I would love to hear from everybody who attended, perhaps one word or phrase that you're taking away from today's conversation, whether it's the roundtable or the events that you attended earlier.
I just want to point out that that link isn't working, Andy. Couple people have said the link didn't work for me either.
I'll get you a new one in the follow-up email.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for asking us to be beta testers on that. That looks great. I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody who showed up today. Thank you to Reimagine for providing this space. There really is not anything like it that I have found that is so accessible for people, you know, free or a donation. Like, it's really very gracious of you and the people who work at Reimagine and do this for all of us and provide these spaces for us to come together. And I love that idea of that community. And I want to thank my fellow colleagues here. You guys are amazing. I just am so blessed, just so blessed that my grief has brought us together, right? Without it, I wouldn't know you guys probably. So, a little silver lining there. And thank you all participants for showing up today. Again, stepping into a painful place with courage. Thank you. Stay connected.
I want to say thank you also, and big gratitude for you all, everyone who came today. It's just been so healing for me to see you in the room and know that we are sharing in this experience together. And gratitude for Anna, Amanda, Elreacy, Nina, Andy, thank you. Just really, it's been a powerful day for me, and I came ready to share, but I got so many things back. So loved it.
And same, I'm just going to piggyback on what the two of you said. Thanks to Reimagine, thanks to all of my fellow presenters, and to all of the participants, not just showing up with courage, but showing up with heart, with hope, and figuring out what you need. And truly what I say is, when we step into trying to find a healing moment, when we step into that energy of hope and healing, reconciling grief, figuring out what we need, that just that mere act ripples out to the world around you. And so you are truly making an impact, whether it's your intention or not. You're making a positive impact in the space around you just by showing up for yourself. And I think I can speak for all of us that we truly are here for you, and we have each one of you, no matter what your journey is that brought you here, in our hearts and in our minds and in our thoughts. And we're here to support you however we can.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so grateful that we had the opportunity to spend this entire day with you, that we got to learn more about your respective experiences and how you've navigated it and the emotions that came from that. I'm thankful, of course, to my colleagues, Amanda, Nina, Susie, Sundari, Anna, and of course to Reimagine for making this phenomenal platform. I think that the greatest takeaway that I have from all of this is that even though we are all navigating these very different losses, these very challenging and painful losses, there's the beautiful aspect of community and unity that comes from it. And ultimately, if I had not, experienced grief and the various other things that have happened in my life, I might not have met any of my friends here or spent this evening with you. So I'm grateful for each and every one of you.
All right, thank you, everybody. I see some comments about the link. Andy will be sending that in the follow-up email along with all of the freebies and the replay. So be out on the lookout for that email in the next week or so. So give us some time to put it all together. And then I just want to read off, because this is beautiful. We are co-creating the space. This was a beautiful exchange. And some of the feedback, Corinne says grief budget. She's taking away grief budget from this, the concept. That was great. Trish says understanding and acceptance. Karen says, thank you. This was incredibly helpful. And I feel a great deal, a lot more hope, excuse me. Corinne says, can you include the link to the research on spoons? I think you got the link from somebody, but that was also a great piece of information there. And Julie says, I'm not alone in my feelings of grief. You're definitely not. We are in this together. Erin says, thank you for creating this space for community, because grief can feel very lonely. And I think that's it. So again, thank you. Kathy says, we grieve because we love. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for my colleagues, Reimagine, Andy, and I wish you a gentle holiday season, and one where you honor your needs your way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye. Love to all.